Good morning. I'm Dr. Bob Mortlock. On behalf of the Acquisition Research Program, welcome to the 23rd Annual Acquisition Research Symposium. That's right. You heard that correctly. The 23rd. This is now our third time doing a completely virtual online event. While we value the advantages of the in-person experience, the virtual format allows us to reach 4 times as many interested acquisition professionals. This year, we have over 1,500 registered participants. And this kind of participation in the Acquisition Research Symposium is particularly relevant because it has been a year of acquisition reform. Starting with the executive order modernizing defense acquisition and spurring innovation, in which the acquisition workforce, all of you, are rightly referred to as a national strategic asset. And the SEC War Memo, transforming the defense acquisition system into a warfighting acquisition system, recognizing that acquisition is a warfighting function, with the goal of instilling warrior ethos in the acquisition workforce. At the forefront of these changes is the Naval Postgraduate School, which stands ready to help make these recent acquisition reform initiatives a reality by providing world-class education, and the Acquisition Research Symposium stands ready to highlight world-class research to improve the speed and scale of capability delivery to our warfighter. Over the next 2 days, researchers will share their research, which highlights the impact that applied acquisition sciences research can have. Research focused on innovation and the integration of emerging technologies into warfighting systems. I encourage you all to get involved. Ask questions. Diversity of thought and perspectives is the way we will collectively meet the commander's intent. I'd like to recognize the generous support for the symposium and the Acquisition Research Program by the Office of the Secretary of Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition, ASNRDA, the Navy Director of Acquisition Talent Management, DATM Office, and the Navy PEO Integrated Warfare Systems. This year's symposium is the result of a 6-month planning effort led by the ARP PM, Carrie Schaefer, the ARP Communications Manager, Maureen Lauder, as well as the folks behind the curtain, Nadia Greer and Giselle Benson. Some administrative remarks. The keynote addresses and the panel session recordings will all be available on the symposium website. The symposium proceedings, 3 volumes, are available, and the presentations will eventually be available as well. Make sure you sign up for the ARP weekly newsletters to get updated current events. I encourage everyone to use the DARE Defense Acquisition Innovation Repository database as well, which now has over 4,600 research papers. Finally, in the panel sessions over the next 2 days, you'll have the ability to ask questions in the Q&A functionality for the panel chairs and the researchers to address as appropriate. And now, I'd like to introduce the President of NPS, Vice Admiral Retired Anne Rondeau. You can all read Admiral Rondeau's bio, which highlights her distinguished naval career, but what I see is someone who is committed to serving others and someone with a commitment to education. She has a doctorate in education, culminated her naval career as president of the National Defense University, and led one of the largest single-campus community colleges in the country before being appointed as the 13th president of NPS. Please welcome Admiral Rondeau for symposium opening remarks. Good morning.
Good morning. I also welcome all of you who are out there in the country and on the globe to this 23rd Annual Acquisition Research Symposium and Innovation Summit. Acquisition and innovation. This is the time now to be thinking about the various aspects of what acquisition, procurement, and the entire world of logistics means for our nation and our globe. The renewed energy that we have toward this is not only guided by what Dr. Mortlock had said, but also about the circumstances in which we find ourselves. Acquisition and all of the aspects of bringing forth the supply chain are critical. NPS is the only U.S. military institution that teaches at a graduate level all manner of things in military context. And we are uniquely positioned to help develop and to actually sustain that workforce, which is so important to all of us today. We have warrior scholars who wear the uniforms of our nation and others. We have our entire civilian workforce who is in this world in which we must invest for the future of not only the United States, but of all of the globe. The work informs acquisition policy, but it also really works hard to look at decision making and the sustainability of systems that can be brittle and fragile, but must be sustainable and supported. We look at prototypes, we look at new thoughts and ideas, we look at innovation, and those are the things then to apply that towards capability. So for these next 2 days, I do encourage what Dr. Mortlock had said. Ask questions. This country is built upon asking the questions that lead to the solving of issues and problems. We're very pleased to have you here, and I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Bob Mortlock, to Carrie Schaefer, to the chair of their department, Dr. Simone Tick, as well as the Glastonbury Audio Visual. We began this during COVID, and it has just sustained itself with the audience that is you. It's grown, and the importance of the conversations are deep and relevant. So I encourage all of us to just be part of this dialogue that's important to mission and to nation. And I thank you for your caring about this enough to really spend your time on this. You're going to hear some great speakers, some great leaders, and it is promising to be a very good 2 days. Thank you again.
Thank you, President Rondeau. And now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Jason Potter, performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Research, Development, and Acquisition, ASNRDA. Mr. Potter was appointed as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Ship Programs in May of 2025. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Potter served as a professional staff member in the U.S. Senate on the Appropriations and the Armed Services Committees. In addition to this impressive civilian career, he's also had an exceptional naval career and is still in the U.S. Navy Reserve. But what I really want to highlight is Mr. Potter is a proud NPS alum. Mr. Potter, please accept this warm welcome to the symposium.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mortlock. It's an honor to be here, and as you said, as a proud alumnus, an honor to speak at the symposium. And it is very timely. The warfighting acquisition concepts and research presented this week will be very valuable as we are in the midst of foundational change to how we do business and deliver capability more rapidly to sailors and Marines. It's a true honor to serve at this time in the Navy's history, where our Navy and Marine Corps are front and center on the world stage in every theater. Our sailors and Marines are doing the nation's critical business in the Middle East, Pacific, North Atlantic, Gulf of America, and beyond. The tempo and complexity of their operations is eye-watering. They are my #1 customers, and my job is to put the tools in their hands to defeat any adversary. And that is the work being done by the unsung heroes from Maine to San Diego, Marinette to Homa, and thousands of towns and cities in between that are part of the Defense Industrial Base. As the Department of War rapidly expands the use of robotic and autonomous systems, that industrial base is welcoming new partners from Austin to Brooklyn to Silicon Valley and beyond. A key focus of this administration is growing the fleet and increasing shipbuilding. We are making historic investments. We have 80 ships on contract and 53 under construction, including 3 aircraft carriers and 15 submarines. That's historic tonnage for the Navy. Last year, we accepted delivery of 8 battle force ships, including the USS Massachusetts and Idaho, marking the delivery of 4 Virginia-class submarines in under 2 years. We need to continue to improve our construction performance across the board, but there is positive momentum. And all this and more was accomplished last year during the first ever year-long continuing resolution for the Department of War and the longest government shutdown in history. Last July, the President signed One Big Beautiful Bill into law. It provided a massive $29 billion to revitalize the U.S. Navy's shipbuilding and maritime industrial base. It funded major vessel procurements, including $1.9 billion to jumpstart the Marine Corps medium landing ship. Beyond ships, the bill provided more than $5 billion for next generation capabilities like unmanned surface and underwater vehicles. Another $5 billion for our maritime industrial base to expand capacity, bring additive manufacturing, and drive AI processes. On munitions, the fleet has been busy. During Operation Epic Fury and the Red Sea before, the fleet's performance has been near flawless. The missions were accomplished, but lots of munitions were expended in the process. And there is a singular focus across the Department of War on munitions and scaling up these programs. We're seeing results as deliveries of components and munitions rise above contract rates for the first time in several years. A year ago, President Trump issued 2 executive orders on the same day, April 9th. One on restoring America's maritime dominance, and a second on modernizing defense acquisition and spurring innovation. They were mentioned at the beginning. The administration's Golden Fleet Initiative is at the crossroads of both of these, and our strategic approach to deliver more combat capability and capacity to the fleet than ever before. The 3 pillars of this initiative are clear. First, to maintain and enhance maritime dominance. We are expanding the ways the naval services will ensure victory over any enemy, anytime, any place. The Navy is preparing to meet any foe throughout the spectrum of competition and conflict with a high-low mix of capabilities. That requires us to invest in new and current classes of combat ships at both ends, and in new capabilities such as unmanned systems that multiply the effects of the joint force. Second, revitalize the industrial base. We're revitalizing shipyards across America with tens of billions of dollars in stable, predictable, long-term investments to get more ships in the water and bolster high-skill, high-wage American jobs. We're improving production of established ship classes through expanded distributed shipbuilding efforts. And by prioritizing auxiliary ships, we're meeting both the needs of the fleet and regenerating capacity for commercial shipbuilding. Third, changing how we do business. We're moving Navy acquisition from a compliance-based bureaucracy to an outcome-focused warfighting enterprise, restoring accountability, rewarding performance, and embracing advanced technology to deliver capability at speed by enforcing discipline, leveraging distributed production, and enabling stable, repeatable work. To enable the Golden Fleet Initiative, the fiscal year 2027 budget requests $65.8 billion in shipbuilding funding alone for 18 battle force ships and 16 non-battle force ships. The budget will maintain or increase the procurement of existing battle force platforms, including amphibious vessels. The budget also supports recapitalization of a range of auxiliary vessels. I don't know if I'm. Can I get a mic check?
Yes, sir. We hear you.
Okay. All right. And while dozens of acquisition reforms are underway, establishing the Department of the Navy's Rapid Capability Office, portfolio acquisition executives, in holding industry accountable for self-investment and performance are key to changing how the Department of the Navy does business. The Department of the Navy's Rapid Capability Office is the vanguard of our cultural shift, adopting a warfighter-centric view to solve the fleet's hardest problems in a 1 to 3 year timeline. Led by Vice Admiral O'Connell and comprised of a small team of experts, we are working with the fleet to solve those problems every day, many of which are classified. And after creating the RCO based on direction from Secretary Hegseth, as was mentioned at the beginning, the Navy made another foundational change, eliminating our PEOs and establishing portfolio acquisition executives amidst broader acquisition reform. And these PAEs are a small group of leaders, 10 or 11, with the responsibility, authority, and accountability to speed up the delivery of their portfolio of capabilities. In December, we stood up our first PAE for robotic and autonomous systems. Last month, we established 5 more for maritime, industrial operations, undersea, strategic systems, and Marine Corps. We'll soon announce 3 more for aviation, mission systems, and munitions. These Navy PAEs have direct authority not only for program offices, but also over associated technical, contracting, and sustainment functions, providing much greater cradle-to-grave control to deliver fully integrated capabilities. While roughly 70% of the functions and personnel that previously at our systems commands are being realigned to PAEs to support this unified effort, our systems commands will still have a role, and we're studying the functions they'll retain. A key early initiative for the Golden Fleet and PAEs is the Medium Unmanned Surface Vessel, or MUSV. Last month, PAE RAS demonstrated how we are doing business differently to deliver capability to the fleet faster. While many companies have mature platforms with significant private investment already made in unmanned vessels, PA RAS opened a marketplace where these shipbuilders and technology companies can compete. And as more fleet and CNO requirements solidify, more competitive marketplaces will open. This model will be more responsive to the fleet with more opportunities to compete. We expect to deliver mission-capable MUSVs 12 to 18 months faster than under our previous plan, saving taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars and needless prototyping in the process. This administration is committed to building a more lethal and ready naval force and taking decisive action to do so. We're supporting distributed shipbuilding efforts around the country and deploying innovative contract structures to better balance risk and opportunity between the government and our industry partners. We're holding ourselves and our contractors accountable, canceling or restructuring programs that we're not delivering, or too expensive, or too slow. We're initiating programs that will better meet warfighting and operational requirements. We've implemented portfolio acquisition executives to streamline acquisition and more rapidly deliver capability to the fleet. Challenges ahead are real, but so are the opportunities. Rebuilding our industrial capacity is a long-term effort that requires a sustained whole-of-nation commitment. The Department of the Navy is fully committed to this mission. Well, there's much more to talk about. I'll stop here. I'm looking forward to your questions and feedback and want to hear what's on your mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potter. And we do have some questions coming in, and I will look at those. To start off, I think you mentioned, obviously, the transformation initiatives. In light of those and the emphasis toward speed to the fleet, can you talk to the balance between speed to the fleet through using like middle tier of acquisition or other transaction authority, that balance between speed to fleet and the building of exquisite, complex, military systems? How do we balance that?
Sure. So I think in terms of the tools that we have available, whether it's other transaction authority, middle tier of acquisition, FAR-based contracts, commercial solutions openings. I mean, there's no shortage of tools. And in general, we feel like we have the tools we need to do the job. And what it results in is, I think, spending more time in what we call acquisition leadership, which is around this table with our most senior acquisition professionals that have the experience, deciding what is the right tool for the program, given the maturity of the program, the competitive marketplace or lack thereof, the state of the technologies, the urgency with the fleet. So I think every case, we're handling on a case by case basis to evaluate that balance and make sure we're applying the tools to the maximum effect, and at the same time recognizing where there may be shortcomings or the pros and cons. Every tool has advantages, but there also may be some downsides that we need to be aware of. So I think part of that the transformation allows us more space with our fewer number of PAEs to work through some of the big decisions that need to be made. After we get recommendations from the team in which direction we want to go. So, we've done middle tier on shipbuilding programs recently. There's a ground vehicle that we just signed out middle tier for and really delegated it down because that's what made sense. So that's kind of how we're looking at it is when there are those decision points and really at the early stages of the program where you have the most ability to influence the outcome and set the program on a path that it'll execute for years or decades. That's where we need to really strategically ensure we're making well-informed decisions.
That makes sense. Yes, sir. Now you also mentioned, obviously in the defense industrial base is a prioritization in the transformation effort. And can you also speak to some of the challenges of getting the commercial shipbuilding industrial base more involved with building warships?
Sure. So I think it's pretty well known, our commercial shipbuilding sector builds less than 1% of the global commercial trade. It's over time eroded, and the Jones Act is a key element that enables our commercial shipbuilding sector to remain in the business it's in. So I think in this year's budget we have 18 battle force ships and 16 non-battle force ships, 34 total. Those 16 non-battle force ships, most of which are auxiliaries, we see that as a key element to how we will also assist the commercial shipbuilding sector. So those ships may be built in shipyards that are not the typical ones we use in the Navy. We're open to other options. And so we're going to have, I think, a vibrant competition and a process to select kind of how we're going to go about really recapitalizing our auxiliary fleet, which is because of the top line and which is about 40% higher for shipbuilding than it was last year. We have an opportunity we've not had in a long time to really focus on those auxiliaries and then the shipyards that may build them. And then that's a commitment, through the future years defense program, the next 5 years, where there'll be more. And we want to see longer term contracts, innovative acquisition strategies that really do allow us to expand the shipbuilding industrial base, including new shipyards in this country. So I think that the focus in this budget on recapitalizing auxiliaries is key.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Now we do have quite a few questions coming in, and I'll try to curate them a little bit. The first question comes in, and there's quite a bit of interest on leveraging our Navy civilian workforce, and there's interest in, and this question has to do with contributing to these rapid efforts and initiatives like the Rapid Capability Office. Are there any initiatives that enable the Navy civilian workforce to contribute to the Rapid Capability Offices as experts, for example?
Sure. Yeah, I think uh, the deputy director, so the director of the Rapid Capabilities Office is Admiral O'Connor. The deputy is a Navy civilian, Jim Juster, who comes from PEO IWS. A lot of our RCO pedigree is from the Overmatch team that people may be familiar with, which is kind of our high-end kill chain technicians. And so there's a NIWC Nav War lineage to this that involves many talented civilians. So I think there's absolutely a place for Navy civilians. They're throughout our PAEs. They're in the RCO. They're leading some of our PAEs. Probably half of them are led by Navy civilian senior executives. We also have rapid capability cells. Kind of our RCO structure is the RCO sits at the top that reports to the Secretary of the Navy. And then within each of our 10 or 11 PAEs, we have rapid capability cells. And so our approach to RCO is sort of based on the problem we're trying to solve. We reach into the PAEs that we need, but it's driven by an acquisition, focus coming out of this office to ensure we're actually fielding capabilities and moving forward. So the opportunity is there. If you're in our PAE structure as a civilian, seek out the rapid capability cell. If you're here in the Pentagon, come see us on the E-ring 4E665. We'll put you to work in our RCO. Yeah, we're always looking for talent, and there's a number of ways for us to work with folks that have a passion for this.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. This question has to deal with the challenge between innovation and getting innovation and future capability, and now also how does that balance with the need for stockpiling of munitions and maintaining our current capabilities? How is the department, balancing those two things, especially with the budget and the prioritization issues or challenges that we have?
Sure. I think honestly, we're in a unique place here where with our $1.5 trillion top line, it is kind of a both and proposition this year. We're going after as much production of existing weapons as we can, really pushing the envelope higher, well above max production rates through new investments in facilitization at our traditional primes and their suppliers. And we're also investing heavily in non-traditionals and kind of low-cost alternative capabilities, recognizing they won't all work, but we've got to, start prototyping and working through promising technologies and non-traditional company offerings. And within Navy, we have our MACE effort. I could go down a list of different things where we are working both aggressively, and it's even at the component level, whether it's rocket motors or castings or casings, where we see choke points and are things slowing us down from delivering more. We're looking for second, third sources. So it's from the end item itself to the raw materials, and you'll see that in our budget.
Thank you, sir. And speaking of initiatives and future capability, there are some efforts with containerization. Can you speak to how the use of the CNO just recently announced a containerization initiative for mission capability? Can you speak with how the PAEs are fitting into this initiative for containerization?
Sure. And honestly, yeah, so containerization is a central element, I think, to the force design, the CNO's hedge strategy, the high-low mix, which is kind of increasingly how we're talking about our platforms. And so containerization is exactly that. It's a 20 or 40 foot shipping container, and it's basically a box, and it's what can you get in the box and modify the box, but keep that form factor so that you have a kind of modular open system architecture in a way that is contained and with as few interfaces as possible. So to get the right space, weight, cooling, power for the box, and then try to have the box sort of meet those swap parameters. So that really is a central element of the MUSV that I mentioned in my opening, is it will be the platform to carry containers. And the reason we're doing the MUSV competition now is we have a CNO requirement for 30 of these platforms that have a specific container. And those containers are being developed in parallel. And the idea is you get the platform that is kind of container agnostic, and then you bring the platform, for the mission need to the, you bring the container and the payload to the, to the platform for the mission need. And we think that will really unlock not only the commercial unmanned surface vessel market, where they can just focus on a certain endurance and speed and power to support these containers. And then separately, we can develop containers that have, you could imagine, counter C4 or counter, C4I things, positive comms and C4I things, kinetic payloads, potentially logistics, it's just moving things in the box from A to B. There's anti-submarine warfare things. So I think across our warfare areas, the question is, how do you containerize it? And then from there, we're building, the MUSV approach, which could be government-owned, contractor-owned, depending on what's in the box and kind of how we need to operate. So there's kind of an inherent flexibility there, a way to really take MOSA and operationalize it. And then I think even on our manned vessels, we're planning for containers. So our new frigates will be, kind of brought to the fleet with containers in mind. So, the same containers, and they're friendly and, port facilities around the world that have cranes to move 40-foot ISO containers. We think there's a really interesting opportunity there. We're absolutely behind the Chief of Naval Operations and his containerization plan, and it marries up with our acquisition strategy, particularly on the medium unmanned surface vessel, but it more broadly, you're going to see that as well.
That is fantastic news, sir. This question comes as obviously the acquisition professionals are all committed to the acquisition change and reform and increase the speed to fleet of capability. And this question has to deal with our partners on the commercial side, our DoD contractor counterparts. Do you have any thoughts on how we can increase and ensure they're just as committed to this reform effort as we are as acquisition professionals from the contractor side?
Sure. I think there's a lot of upside for contractors in this new paradigm, where we're trying to make it easier for them to do business with us. And I think between acquisition, there's 38 different acquisition reform initiatives, and some of them are simplifying the FAR and removing, FAR language and provisions and terms and conditions that aren't constructive at this point. And I think so that should be interesting to them. I think the PAEs, we're giving them more authority, more ability to control their programs, to contract, to control technical requirements, how things can be qualified as new vendors, new components, life cycle planning. So I think industry will be able to have a more fulsome discussion with these PAEs without having to go to different offices and different commands around the Navy trying to put all the pieces together. So the PAE should become more of a one-stop shop. We should have the revolution in the FAR kind of helping kind of how you contract with us. And then there's obviously a number of other efforts here, all aimed at speeding up delivery to the fleet, commercial first, wherever it makes sense and wherever we can do it, and so forth. But in return, there's more accountability, and we're expecting performance. We're expecting companies to self-invest, self-finance. we're looking to place larger orders, longer term orders. The goal here is the companies work the business case, figure out, how to meet our demand, and kind of we're good partners that way. So even in munitions, you're seeing longer term contracts, innovative contract structures to really incentivize the industry investment up front in their own facilities to meet these higher demand numbers, for munitions in this case. So it's an exciting time, right? There's a lot changing, and I think being a part of it and giving us feedback is helpful as we're continuing to refine our acquisition policies and our solicitations and kind of everything in between.
Thank you, sir. This question has to deal along the same line with our commercial partners, and it has. We for years we've been challenged with trying to increase small business participation because historically that's where the most innovation takes place. Are there any new initiatives to help small businesses get involved, especially with the limitations on capability and capacity? Are there any specific initiatives to help a greater small business participation?
Sure. I think Navy had a really good year in 2025 with our small business targets and continuing all the programs, mentor, protege, SIBR sitter, etc. So I think it's kind of all of the traditional tools are still there. And as we go forward, I think there is more opportunity working not only with the Office of Naval Research that kind of always has these broad area announcements out and kind of solicits white papers, and there's opportunity there to explain what you're working on. I think our PAEs, again, we're looking for second and third sources of things. We're being, I think, more proactive across our industrial base, understanding it, knowing kind of what companies are capable of. I think the outreach every year, I think we're getting further and further into our industrial base. Honestly, data analytics also help us see some of these small businesses maybe before they see us, and we'll approach them. I mean, we're getting, I think, more aggressive. So it's a two-way street, and I think on our side, solicitations are open on our MUSV competition. For example, we had a range of offers from different sizes of companies. So I'd say keep in touch with those small business advocates. Let them know what you're capable of. There is lots of opportunity, not only because of the higher Navy budget, but also the limitations that we're seeing in some of our larger contractors. And we know where innovation is, and much of it comes from small businesses. And also, those could be our future second and third sources of program of record components. So, I'd say it's a great time to be a small business. It's never easy sometimes to break in and do business with the government, but we will work at it. And I encourage you to reach out to the Navy's Office of Small Business Programs. Their website's pretty friendly to sort of getting initially in the door to work with us.
Thank you, sir. There's quite a few questions about the transition to the PAE model, and that obviously has been pushed for a number of years now, and the department is moving in that direction. And so there's quite a few questions about what you see as the differences between the future, the PAE model, and the legacy kind of SysCom PEO culture. And do you see any risks there? Or if it can highlight the differences between the SysCom PEO structure and the new PAE model structure.
Sure. So we've been on this journey for a while, really since the fall, and then Secretary Hegseth's memo in November put us, really in run to make sure we fully implement that direction and achieve the the faster delivery of the capabilities through the PAEs. But as we did it, we've done this through transition teams with the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Vice Chief of Naval Operations, and me have kind of led a process with all the stakeholder engagement and participation from the services and the acquisition community, as well as the systems commands. And that has sort of led us through to the kind of identifying how to set up the portfolios, what the portfolio exact, just the scope of the responsibilities would be. And so the Navy view of this is different than the Army and the Air Force, partly because we're beginning from different places, and then partly, the process we're using, and also kind of the nature of our work and the capabilities we're trying to deliver. But to your question about what's different between the SysCom PEO thing and the PAEs. So we looked at, you go back to the beginning of time in the late 1700s, acquisition was run out of the Secretary of the Navy's office when the Secretary of the Navy was established, I think in the 1790s. And then from that point until the mid 1800s, when the bureaus were established, it was still really a SecNav function to do acquisition. And then the bureaus that brought in the admirals, and the admirals started, to help as the Navy grew, set up, a bureau for ships and so forth. And then the bureaus kind of were the way acquisition was done to the secretary until the mid 1900s. I think it was 1960s when the SysComs were created. And in the case of the SysComs, that's really the beginning, like where you can trace back NAVC, NAVAIR. And the SysComs kind of took over for the bureaus, still kind of aligned with the service chiefs, and then, kind of ran acquisition out of the SysCom. In the 1980s, the Packard Commission and kind of Goldwater-Nichols era, you saw the establishment of the PEOs and the service acquisition executives, which I'm fortunate to serve as, to sort of professionalize acquisition in a way, because now you're in the dawn of Aegis, things are getting more technical, and sort of, those decisions were made. But the way the Navy stood up the PEOs was they sort of took program management, I think, out of the SysCom, created PEOs, and had it report to the acquisition executive, the ASN RDA. But it left pretty much all the other supporting things in the SysCom. So contracting, technical, engineering, sustainment, shipyards. And so you kind of had a PEO that had program management and some acquisition authority, but not necessarily contract authority, and not kind of the technical team that have it all under one house like it had been previously. So I would argue, really, for the last 40 years, we've had this segmented system where you've had PEOs that have had programmatic authority, but not kind of all the technical and those other functions that they need to fully run the programs. And so they were having to go to NAVC, and there's a lot of, in that case of shipbuilding, a lot of back and forth about technical standards, where the technical warrant holders sit. The head of contract activity was the commander of NAVC. So contract approvals had to go through the commander of NAVC for the PEO to be able to move out. Budget submitting office is NAVC, so that the comptroller function and the flow of funds kind of went through NAVC first before it got to the PEOs. So what we're trying to do here is get all that stuff streamlined again. We want the PAEs to not have to go to someone else to get their budget. We want the PAE to be able to contract, for their own items. We want them to be able to have the technical stuff in-house to make good technical choices. We want them to have life cycle management so they can plan class maintenance plans and ships can get to their expected service life. It's really similar to how strategic systems programs is set up, as well as naval reactors. So I'd argue we have kind of two PAEs, and we have had for decades in the Navy. We know how to do this. But really, I would argue, back to the 80s, we sort of split split things in a way that until we kind of make this change, it's really difficult to speed up and hold a single person accountable for program outcomes. So that's how we're looking at it.
That makes sense. And we do have some questions about, for example, as a follow-on to that, for PAE decisions and the PAE to be effective, they do need to have a portfolio acquisition baseline. And so can you speak to how the CNO staff, how the PAE will work with the operational CNO staff on making those decisions about funding, cancellation, schedule?
Right. It's we're working through it, but as kind of the broader DOW policy we're using, and I think in the NDAA. So part of this is FY26 National Defense Authorization Act mandated portfolio acquisition executives and kind of the structure that so that's kind of the arc of this thing. But to the question of how we work with CNO and the Commandant, so I'd say the system, the process, as I've said, to get to this point has been well supported with the service chiefs. They still have their service chief responsibilities and authorities. And we've done a couple capability trade councils already where with OpNav, it's kind of the N9 Deputy Chief of Naval Operations with our PAE, and they're kind of hand in hand working through proposed trade-offs for a given program, making pros and cons. And in that case, it reported to me and the CNO their recommendation, right? And the CNO and I kind of jointly worked through that and gave direction. So, that's one. But I think if at lower levels, it's not all going to come up to the acquisition executive and the CNO, but there is an expectation. Yeah, an expectation at all levels, right? At the appropriate level, we're working with the service counterparts. And I honestly think our collaboration is fantastic. There's going to be tension, and particularly as we're transforming, the acquisition process fundamentally at this point, just keeping the lines of communication open. It's kind of a make before break approach to the new processes. And there have been hiccups, but I'd say we're bringing everyone along together. But the Capability Trade Council going forward will be a way to have visibility. We do quarterly portfolio reviews with the PAEs that the CNO and staff and the Commandant staff are part of. And then there's just regular touch points. The other part is, there's 10 or 11 of these PAEs. You know them by name, and that's the person you should go to if you have an issue in the maritime portfolio or the undersea portfolio or the munitions portfolio. So the other part is where it may have taken 5 or 10 senior leaders to sort of be in the room to solve a problem before, we can now hopefully do it with like 1, 2, or 3. And so the CNO and me with a couple of the PAEs can work through issues, and then they have the authority to direct down and in what needs to happen. So that's the theory. So far, a couple initial cases, I think we're going to be okay.
Thank you, sir. This question has to deal again with the shipbuilding gap and the balance between purchasing commercial off-the-shelf platforms, but it has a different twist. Can you speak to how we're working with our international partners to leverage the international expertise for particularly like small combatant ships? And do you see any risks in that, or how do we balance our international leveraging the international space and also balancing that with our initiatives to strengthen our own industrial base?
Sure. 3 of the shipyards that we regularly do or three of the shipyards, the Navy is working with are owned by foreign companies. So we've got Fincantieri in Wisconsin, Philly Shipyard in Pennsylvania, and then Austal in Alabama. So having foreign involvement in Navy shipbuilding, is nothing new for us. And they bring their techniques, they bring different design approaches, and we view that as positive. And I think there's the other case, our LST, or the medium landing ship is based on the LST 100 design, which is a foreign design. So, and it's a commercial design. And so in that case, with some minor modifications to comply with the law and that kind of have some functionality, basic, change, we're using a foreign commercial design to sort of be one of our ships going forward. So we see, we're open to kind of all options here. Everything's on the table. There's sort of the techniques for shipbuilding, the designs for shipbuilding, the production capacity for shipbuilding, the investment into the United States of foreign companies to support shipbuilding. There's a range of things that have happened in the past, a range of things happening now, and a number of things, we're considering in the future to make the Navy stronger.
That makes sense, sir. Thank you very much. This question has a focus on, there's an emphasis on commercial first and involving the private sector more, and that's a good initiative. On the flip side, what do you see as the most important capabilities for the government workforce to bring to this new operating system where we're relying on commercial industry and the private sector?
Sure. I think it's a really good question, because I think it's, in the end, these systems need to be effective in combat, operationally suitable and effective. And it's the government workforce that needs to translate warfighting requirements, government, I mean civilian and military, translating warfighting requirements into something we can go to the marketplace and bring back to meet those requirements. And in there's a lot of room in terms of if it's a performance approach or if it's a technical detail approach of what we're looking for in the marketplace. And we're looking for the government workforce to really strike the right balance on how prescriptive we are based on the requirements it needs to meet. And I think, we always want it to be more commercial, and it's sort of by exception, what are those things we need to be prescriptive about to ensure mission success? And so I think the writing of a solicitation, the writing of the specification within it, the test criteria, like on the medium unmanned surface vessel, we're basically giving them our needs, up to the companies how they meet them, and they invest to do it. And then there's an on-water test called a gauntlet, either on a production vessel or surrogate, where they can show us if they can meet our needs. And the needs are really kind of a speed and endurance level with the swap and autonomy to support a mission profile. So it's interesting work, right? The government has got to wrap your head around where industry is and how to go to the market, and then what they need to be able to bring back from the market and deliver to Pacific Fleet, Central Fleet, Fifth Fleet, whatever it is, and then have it be put to work and be effective and then be sustainable. So that's kind of the work right now, within the PEOs, PAEs, as it has been for years, where, there's that's kind of, I think, the intellectual and the exciting part of the job. But there's also the land-based test sites, all the things happening at our warfare centers to support fielded capabilities or to reduce the technical risk, through land-based testing and modeling and other things. That is super important. I mean, we have warfare center people around the globe doing in-service engineering and support, keeping our systems up, pacing threats as threats change, doing really technical work to ensure our systems are effective in those environments. So, there's exciting work to be done. that's critical in the engineering field, in the acquisition field. Contracts at this point are getting more and more interesting, and different and novel approaches are supported. So again, I think whatever your discipline is, there's things to lean into here as part of the transformation.
Thank you, sir. And so we have about 5 minutes remaining. There is, I think, one last question then, that maybe you can address. And this recognizes that we're focused on innovation and commercial, but are there any new policy changes or technologies that help with also prioritizing and sustaining the current fleet?
Yeah, so I think the PAE approach for us will be interesting along those lines, where we have a PAE industrial operations that is going to be the PAE that oversees ship depot maintenance. And so it's got reporting from our regional maintenance centers and our public shipyards in a dual hat way with the fleets. So, but that authority, acquisition and contracting, that's going to go through the industrial operations office will sort of allow them to use, different acquisition and contracting approaches for maintenance. And there's a whole number of things that we could do differently once you start to look at ship depot maintenance as a portfolio, and how you structure bundle contracts, how you think about industry involvement there. But the PAE Industrial Operations is going to be working closely with PAE Maritime, who owns the class maintenance plans. And so we're really trying to, for first time in a while, unlock the sustainment of the fleet through this cradle to grave life cycle planning that sits in the PAE with PAE Industrial Operations. So the two of them working closely together to really come up with the way to maximize the operational availability, figure out how to get the maintenance packages, as tight as we can to finish on time, dry dock, maximizing dry dock utilization. There's a number of things here where between the two of them, they should have the authorities and, that they need to be able to really try to hopefully improve the sustainment of the fleet and kind of the ability to meet the CNO's force generation requirements in a way we just haven't had the organizational setup to do before.
Thank you very much, sir. And so we have a few minutes remaining, and I wanted to leave you some time for your closing remarks and any thoughts that you have. Again, we have about 1,500 participants that have joined and are listening to your fantastic remarks. So do you have any closing thoughts or priorities you want to share with the symposium participants this year?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mortlock and Admiral Rondeau again for the opportunity. It's an exciting time. Like I said, I hope all the participants are excited. I think because you're tuned in or because you're presenting your work, you clearly care about acquisition policy and how to get better innovative approaches, so forth. So I think we're all ears, and my team is listening, and my team and I will all be kind of paying attention to the work that comes out of the Naval Postgraduate School and out of this symposium. And now is the time to be involved, feed your ideas into the program offices, to the PAEs, the right place in the Navy, because we're still in a transition period, and we're still, there's still opportunity here to help us make good choices and improve, how we acquire things and ultimately make sailors and Marines more lethal and more supported while they're deployed. So I think I'll just leave it at that. This is a fantastic opportunity. I hope you have a great week. And again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, sir. What a great way to start off our symposium with very insightful comments by Mr. Potter. And I thank all the participants. And we will again be meeting in 15 minutes for the first plenary session. Thank you very much again, sir.
Thank you.